welcome to this installment of the Good Old Days audio collection. This is Ken Tate, editor of Good Old Days magazine, and your host for this look back to those days gone by. In this collection of memories, we'll remember those special days of late spring and early summer, from May Day to Mother's Day to Decoration Day to Father's Day. They were times filled with the gentleness and goodness of home and hearth. Come back with me and share these memories of the time we know affectionately as the good old days. May Day brings back memories of one of the gentlest of days we observed back in our youth. Who can forget this spring ritual with its maypole dances and May baskets? Yet with all its gentleness, May Day could be filled with fear and trepidation for a youngster who was in that gangly stage of life. Maybe then, May Day was more of a cry for help, kind of like a ship in trouble on the high seas. Betty Hatcher remembers just such an experience in May Day! May Day!
In the 30s and 40s, May Day didn't remind us of desperate planes and ships shouting an alert. It wasn't military parades in Red Square or honoring the judicial system in America. Each May Day in my teens, I was up by dawn to wash my face in the dew, a guarantee of beauty. Of course, I really didn't believe that fable. On the other hand, I wasn't going to miss the chance just in case it could work. When the calendar said the first day of May had arrived, it was the culmination of weeks of work and scores of prayers for good weather. We were all involved in the celebration that fell slightly behind Christmas and the 4th of July, but about equal with Thanksgiving. During the bleak days of January through March, the hallways were blasted by Dance of the Flowers issuing from the band room, competing with the chorus, who harmonized to melody in F with "Welcome, sweet springtime, we greet thee with song." By the time the day arrived, even the tone-deaf had learned all the words and hummed along. If you're destined to be tall, as I was, you shoot up a good deal faster than you round out, and you're as graceful with your height as a newborn colt. It's a struggle not to fall over your own feet on a flat surface. You tower over your slower-growing male classmates who only have eyes for the short charmers. So, when parts were assigned annually for the May Day pageant, I had no hope to be chosen Queen of the May, a custom which dates back to antiquity in other countries. The May Queen was always the beauty whose mother kept her hair in golden ringlets. My straight-as-a-board hair alone eliminated me. It couldn't hold a curl 15 minutes. My hope was to be one of the flowers, who crouched in ranks, faces framed by crepe paper petals of yellow jonquil, purple pansies, pink sweet peas, or red tulips. The rest of the year you could tell who had been chosen because their white gym shoes were dyed green. Miss Blake, our gym teacher, had an eye for design, and flowers were chosen by height. Who could believe one blossom a foot taller than the others? But oh, how I wished for green tennis shoes. Nor could I ever hope to be the west wind, who floated white gauze scarves as she danced between the crouched ranks to awaken the crepe paper blooms. She was always the girl who had had real dance lessons. My last year in junior high school, I was down to one unchewed fingernail when Miss Blake got around to me. "Betty, what are we going to do with you? You're still growing." "Well, it's the maypole for you once more." Her hand on my shoulder was kind, but I was doomed to white gym shoes. Every year the janitor constructed 2 10-foot poles and nailed long strips of pastel cloth to the tops. In 3 years, my maypole had never wound the ribbons down the pole. Once the apparatus even fell over, to the delight of the audience and our chagrin, and the janitors. There were no opportunities to practice with the actual pole. Our instructions came on the gym floor as we wove in and out around in a circle. It was a strain on us and Miss Blake. The boys were not interested in this sissy stuff. The girls so chosen were odd shapes and sizes who did not fit the flower ranks and couldn't sing. The only requirement was a white shirt for the boys and a white dress for the girls. Even in the depths of the Depression, we all could meet those standards. My last May Day celebration dawned clear and bright. Ranks of parents on folding chairs edged the school lawn, and the excitement was noisy. The school band had blown its way through the march that led the Queen of May on the arm of her king to gilded thrones on the school steps. The chorus began their song to Springtime as the west wind trailed her scarves between rows of green tennis shoes. It really was effective to see the flower faces lift and stretch upward, reaching for the sky. Finally, it was time for the grand finale, the maypoles. As we took our places, I felt the familiar clutch in my stomach. When the band began with a clash of brass, I realized they had switched music on us. Now it was country dances, and too fast. I eyed Miss Blake, who looked pale as she gave the signal. Jimmy, the roly-poly redhead in front of me, was waving at his parents behind me. I gave him a push, which did not turn him in the right direction, but brought him an angry step toward me. The boy behind me was treading on my heels, hissing, "Go on!" Jimmy, never swift to change ideas, finally reversed, but by then the fat girl in front of him was 5 feet away. He ran to catch up, then forgot whether to go inside or out. I skipped forward and bodily shoved him inside. The snickers from parents were louder than the band. The boy behind passed on my left, and it was my turn to go inside. But there was no one there. It was the old nightmare again I'd fought 3 years running. The ribbon of pink fabric was wet in my hand, and I felt drops oozing down my armpits. Forget them all, I told myself, and slipped into the rhythm of the gym practices. In and out I went, surprised to find I was steady on my feet. Jimmy finally had gotten the hang of it, and our circle grew smaller as the pastels wound down the pole. Soon the ribbons were so short we were as crouched as the flowers had been center stage. We dropped the strands and stood. I glanced at the second maypole. It teetered precariously. The dancers were bunched together on one side, fighting their way through the congestion. Their colored streamers were braiding into one long ponytail, which did not involve the pole. The audience convulsed and the dancers giggled. Band members began to chuckle. When they no longer could pucker for a note, one by one the instruments faded away. With the last duet of clarinet and tuba, the band director dropped his arms and joined the hilarity. We certainly had greeted sweet springtime with laughter and song. I looked up at our neatly braided maypole, and the pastel colors smiled at me. At last, I had had a part in something that turned out right. When parents began to seek their own, in the confusion before Mom and Dad met me, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Betty, you led them beautifully," Miss Blake said. "That's the first time in 4 years a maypole succeeded. Thank you." That was the year I kept my gym shoes white with pride. I was a successful maypole dancer. I'd finally grown up to my feet. Since that day, I've no longer felt I was made up of spare parts. I miss those May Day celebrations. Something fine and gentle has disappeared from our culture. Today, that fateful year's West Wind dances on the New York stage. I also see the May Queen in the supermarket sometimes, except now she's Mrs. 5x5.
The making and placing of May baskets was a selfless act that often brought unexpected blessings to a deprived doorway. This story by Mattie Baker was first printed in 1901 in a spiritual lesson book titled Buds of Hope. Go with me back to when a May Day decision became a better plan.
May baskets. All the school girls were making them, so of course Grace and Gertie had the May basket fever and came to Aunt Clem for help. "You see," said Grace, "we want to make a very nice one for Blanche Armour." "Why do you want to make one for her?" asked Aunt Clem. "She isn't one of your mates." "No," said Gertie. "She's older and don't often notice us, but I do want to give her a May basket." "She is so pretty," added Grace. "I love to look at her." Aunt Clem knew the Armours well, and that Blanche had every wish gratified at home, so she said, "I'm afraid Blanche wouldn't care for your homemade basket. She will probably have so many finer ones. But isn't there someone who would be pleased with the attention, no matter how poor and cheap your little offering is?" "I have a scheme in my mind," said Aunt Clem, "if you'll help me carry it out. I'm thinking of the Hildreth girls who go to your school. They would be nice looking if they had pretty things to wear, and I'd like to make each of them a white ruffled apron and give it to them in such a way that they would enjoy both the gift and the way it was given." "Oh, in a May basket," cried Grace. "They would enjoy that, for they probably never had any." "I have 2 pretty flower baskets, and I can pack an apron in the bottom of each. You girls can line the baskets with tissue paper, fringe the edges, and make them as pretty as possible. Then we'll fill the baskets with flowers, and we'll all go out there after dark and hang the baskets on their door." "Oh, what a lark!" cried Gertie. "And we'll keep it secret from everybody," said Grace. "It would spoil the whole thing if they found out where the baskets came from." So all 3 went to work with such success that on the evening of May Day they went and hung the baskets on the big knob on Hildreth's front door. "I'm just as glad we carried those to the Hildreth girls," said Grace the next day. "They looked so nice in their white aprons, and each brought her lunch in one of those baskets instead of their old rusty dinner pail. They wore some of the flowers, too, and seemed so happy." "And I believe we were really happier than they were," said Gertie.
That was The Way You Look Tonight, performed by Donald Novus from the Fibber, McGee and Molly Show, May 23rd, 1939. May baskets are pretty much a thing of the past. That's a pity, because a lot of children learn to be giving and caring for others by devoting hours to the construction of May baskets. Then there was the supreme pleasure of sneaking up onto front porches, leaving the baskets on doorknobs or handles, then knocking loudly before scurrying away to watch in secret as the baskets were discovered. Olive Bertram Peabody remembers those days and asks the question, "Whatever happened to May baskets?"
When I was a little girl, my mother would gather together all of my cousins and her sisters about this time of year to make May baskets. The aunts would supervise, so we wouldn't make a mess of the house, but we had to use our own imaginations in making the baskets. There were large ones, small ones, square, oblong, cornucopias, and anything else we could think of. Each child had his or her own blunt scissors. The paste in those days was made of a smooth consistency of flour and water. Most homes had papered walls, so we had no trouble getting outdated wallpaper sample books and sometimes short rolls of paper from the merchant who handled wallpaper. And it made beautiful baskets. Whatever we had left, we carefully put away to use to wrap Christmas presents when the time came. We also had a scrumptious lunch on those occasions. Each of Mother's sisters brought something and tried to outdo the other ones with her specialty. There was chicken pie, just oozing rich, light brown gravy out of the slits in the top, tempting salads, light rolls, and Mother always made the pièce de résistance, as far as we kids were concerned. In other words, the dessert. Her lemon pies were a good 3 inches high, with fluffy meringue delicately browned. The crust was out of this world, and she couldn't tell anyone just how she made it. She would say, "I just tell by the feel of it." Sometimes she made cake or pudding. The tapioca she made was different from any I have ever tasted. It was clear and had raisins and apples in it, and then was generously topped with real whipped cream. Each child brought a box to pack his baskets in to take home to await May Day, when we would all get together again. We went to the nearby hills to gather wildflowers with which to fill them. In our area in Colorado, we could find sand lilies, Indian paints, blue and white daisies, and sometimes other kinds too, to make colorful arrangements. We rode the interurban trolley to the end of the line and then walked the rest of the way. We must have been a sight, each child carrying a pail fitted with a damp cloth to keep the flowers fresh. Our mothers had boxes of sandwiches and cookies to keep the kids from whining, "I'm hungry." It was great good fun, and the big thrill was yet to come. When we went to our homes, we painstakingly filled the baskets, and they were beautiful. I believe the most fun of all was delivering them. We picked out who was to receive each basket, and there were always some for the elderly or infirm ladies who could not get out to see the wildflowers. They suspected where they came from, but never actually knew, because we would hang the basket on the doorknob, ring the bell, and then run and hide. We hid in a place, however, where we could see the pleased expression on the face of the person who came to the door. A boy would usually save one of his best for a special girlfriend, and then we would tease him unmercifully about it. In those days, a boy would hang his head and kick the dust with the toe of his shoe. The more bashful he was, the more we would tease him. The whole thing was a lovely custom, but maybe it couldn't be evolved in just the same way, because now there are signs prohibiting the picking of wildflowers, and many are on private property. There must be some way, however, of giving today's child a taste of yesterday's fun of making and filling May baskets.
Sometimes May Day events just didn't go the way a young man might wish they would. Take the experience of Robert Longfellow. His experience on that May Day of long ago left him one humiliated spirit.
Each year, our rural Kansas school prepared an elaborate extravaganza to celebrate May Day. However, looking back and recalling the teacher, Ms. McCurkle, I honestly believe she set a trap to get even with the bunch of ornery kids she had taught. The theme was to celebrate the arrival of spring in all its beauty. A group of girls was selected to do the maypole. They were directed to make their dresses in the school colors of green and yellow. The boys had been herded into a singing group. White shirts and blue pants were a must. The words to 2 long songs had to be memorized, the second to be sung only in the event they had a curtain call. Being small for my age, I thought I had escaped being involved in this production. Anyway, I was shy and timid. To think of standing in front of an audience made up of mothers and fathers weakened my knees. Well, I was caught when Miss McCurkle informed me that I was to be the spirit of spring. I would open the production. From a large box she dug out short green pants and a frizzy-looking green pullover garment with dozens of little bells sewn on the collar and sleeves. To top it off, she produced a green pointed hat that had a big tulip secured to the point. I cringed at the thought of wearing this crazy outfit and let it be known that I wasn't about to. Later, Miss McCurkle had a talk with my dad. As Dad put it, I was to be the spirit of spring or else. My part required me to lightly leap out from the wings saying, "I am the spirit of spring. Ah, spring, you make us so happy." I was to wave my flower-covered wand and to the tune of Old MacDonald would sing, "The birds are singing merrily and the little buds are bursting on the trees." Then I was to skip off the stage and the curtain would be pulled apart, starting the first act. Came the opening night, mothers and fathers filled the little area and soon quieted down, anticipating the evening's entertainment. The cast were in their places, and I felt sick standing there in my spring outfit. Before I could escape through the open window, Miss McCurkle gently but firmly pushed me out on the stage. As if a switch had been turned on, I went into my act. I leaped about waving the wand and shouted, "I am the spirit of spring. Ah, spring, you make us very happy." After a few more awkward leaps, I continued, "The birds are busting on the trees and the little buds are singing merrily." This brought laughter from the audience. I knew I'd messed up. I kept thinking bigger leaps would get me off the stage quicker. My last leap was a bit higher than the others, which caused those darn spirit pants to fall to my ankles. With the sound of little bells tinkling, I slid off the stage on my belly. When the audience learned I hadn't been injured, they applauded and cheered with laughter. Miss McCurkle put her arm around me. "Bobby, all great actors have had their bad moments, but they get over it. You were so good, I believe we'll have a comedy show next year."
May Day isn't the only special day of the month. One day is set aside each year to honor mothers. Mothers were everything from teachers to nurses to farmers to seamstresses. Sometimes they had to be carpenters, too. Edna Stover remembers when her mother was a carpenter.
My mother could have been a carpenter. She never asked my father to repair anything about the house. She loved to work with any kind of tools. She mended wobbly chairs, tables, and loose windows. If she wanted a new cupboard in the house, she made it. I am the 4th child, and when I was 8 years old, my father bought a 2-acre orchard 1 mile from the city limits of San Jose. Mother loved the outdoors and farm life, so this would be a better location for her. We were to move there soon. In September of 1908, Dad moved his wife and all 6 children from the cattle ranch, and we said goodbye to the San Lucas and Monterey County area. Mother's health was very poor, and this city was where she could get good doctors. Besides, 2 of her sisters lived there also. After we were settled and 4 of the children were back to school, my father returned to his ranch. Now he had 2 homes to keep going. Mother went to her oldest sister's doctor, but continued to feel badly. In those days, medicine and general practitioners were not what they are today. The asthma and lung colds were still with her, and she felt so very bad. One day the local newspaper had a huge headline, "Dr. Furden, now in San Jose. Anything regardless of what ailed you, he could cure." You can understand why my mother, with a family of small children and being so ill, would want to go for his help. One evening we all piled into the surrey and went to see Healer Furden. I was glad to go, because I loved the bright lights and the amusement he provided. There, on a large platform or stage on the south end of First Street, was the gaily decorated affair. A huge box was in the rear, which I later found out held the good doctor's medicine. 3 musicians sat in the middle, and they were playing the fiddle, a horn, and a drum. Chairs were at the front where patients or guests were to sit. In the rear, behind the platform, was a tent. Suddenly the music stopped playing, and a middle-aged man came onto the stage. He made a circle in front of him of plates, then balls, and other things that a youth handed him. Following this, a pretty girl tap danced and then also returned to the tent. The music played again. After a time, the loud pounding of the drums instantly ceased, and soon walked onto the stage a white-coated, neatly dressed man who easily was 6 feet tall. He was handsome, and what a smooth talker! He soon had most people convinced he could cure them. A young couple brought their deaf boy of about 4 to him. He held the child and rubbed his ears and talked to him. Then he put him in one of the chairs. The youngster appeared different, as though he might be hearing. The oohs and ahs from the crowd encouraged others to come forth. The apparently miraculous cures went on for a time. Then the band broke out again, and Dr. Furden's helper brought forth baskets of his big bottles of medicine. Many people bought them, including my mother, although she didn't go on his stage. Mother took us to listen to Dr. Furden every night for 1 week. The last night he came forth on the stage and called all the women's attention to a large wooden plank securely nailed to 2 huge boxes. "Ladies, we are going to have a contest, and the first one of you who can drive 5 nails perfectly into this board will get $5, he announced. Of course, this would be a challenge to my mother. She stepped forward, climbed the steps, took 5 nails with her left hand, and reached for one of his hammers with her right. There my mother stood at the head of those good ladies when Dr. Furden said, "Ready? Go!" Bang, 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 the hammers went. Cries of pain from hit fingers and thumbs. Tears of anguish and nerves rolled down cheeks. Nails were bent, dropped on the floor, and even flew through the air, but not my mother's. She set the nails on the board at her left, picked up one at a time, held it erect, gave it one firm tap, stood back a little, and came down with one hard blow. She repeated this until all 5 nails had disappeared into the wood. She had to attract the doctor's attention quickly. She was a tall woman, so she instantly held the hammer with the head up high above her head. There was no denying my mother was the victor. Dr. Furden gave her 5 silver dollars. On our way home, Mother said, "At least I got part of my money back. His medicine never cured me."